Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to a new season of the New Age Tour Guide podcast. If this is your first encounter with me, I'm Trish Murray, and this podcast is really about sharing content and creative ways of navigating these age-changing times. And that becomes a threshold for some listeners. Are you seeing or feeling the cultural, social, economic, political landscapes shifting? If you aren't sure how to make sense of what's happening in our world right now, season 1 might be of benefit to you. I draw on a variety of viewpoints with the intention of broadening our perspective and creating a different level of awareness around what's transpiring in the outside world, the external circumstances of our life on planet Earth. I draw from astrology and psychology, and I even tune into some of the most compelling ideas that I've found that have been pointing to the possibility that humanity is moving through a really significant turning point. But in season 2, I'm going to bring you into new thresholds. I'm going to use a specific framework developed by Dr. David Hawkins, the map of consciousness. And I'm going to combine that with examples and insights and stories from my own Eat, Pray, Love journey, and share a little bit about how I think we can shift and anchor new levels of consciousness and find our way to truly thrive in this new age. Now, moving with the spirit of this new age of authenticity, let me say that I'm not a coach and I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. I don't profess to have all or any of the answers. I'm not using this podcast or my Substack channel for that matter to monetize products or services or to sell programs or courses. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things. You will probably have the best experience, though, if you engage with what I share from an understanding that this space is a place where I'm fostering my own creative expression. It's a space that I've dedicated for myself to share ideas and theories that I'm working with, inspirations and insights that I'm gathering from a wide array of directions, and where I'm testing what it is to live as a sovereign soul. In season 2, I created a series of conversations that are really designed to be perennial in nature. And what I mean by that is that it's my hope that they will be enduring. They will be timeless in some sense, and that they will be relevant for people at multiple points through this collective evolution that we're engaged with right now. Season 2 focuses primarily on the pure power of intentionally raising our consciousness. And I speak candidly about key influences that I've found that are blocking or derailing our progress. Influences like the media, the marketing, and high-profile messengers, which I describe as the Matrix. Throughout season 2, I also share examples from my own journey in the last, say, 10 or 15 years about how these influences really showed up for me. Like how I went from being completely triggered by President Trump to cycling through the entire map of consciousness in one night after almost losing my niece's dog this summer. Each season has 9 episodes, and at this point, I plan to do 3 seasons. The first 5 minutes of each episode is video so that you can see who you're listening to and maybe give yourself a little bit of confidence that you're not tuning into something that's been AI generated. You're not. You're not. But then I intentionally shift gears and move into a pure audio podcast because the one thing that I have found to be absolutely true above all else when it comes to shifting consciousness is that we intentionally need to tune out the distractions in order to tune in order to listen for what we need to hear today. We need to be able to create some space so that we can shift our minds and prepare our hearts and listen and reconnect with our soul's voice of wisdom so that we can find truth and wisdom in the directional insights that have the most meaning for us. So let's dive in to a tour of David Hawkins' Map of Consciousness. The first time I saw the movie The Matrix, I was completely haunted by the human pod farms. I suppose it did what it was intended to do. I couldn't unsee that scene after I watched it. It chewed at the edges of my mind for years. The original movie, The Matrix, came out in 1999 and probably added to the fear we were all carrying related to Y2K, which, ironically, hinged on the prospect of a world without technology. If there's one thing the Matrix of the media, the marketing, and the high-profile messengers is masterful at, it's turning the fear that is already coursing through the collective back onto the collective. I had just started what would be a 20-year career working with the media and then the marketing industry. And as with all things new, I was loving my work and enjoying the newness of it all. I felt like I was making a meaningful contribution, however small, to the success of businesses and their visions and their goals. I was surrounded by creative souls, which I discovered that I loved. And for the first half of my career, I worked with genuine people and genuine clients. But then something started to shift. Tensions emerged. Turf wars within the business emerged. Taking on clients that could elevate our prestige and our profile trumped keeping clients that we had worked with for years, where we had strived to create mutually beneficial relationships. Those clients became secondary because they simply weren't sexy enough. They weren't willing to toss the dice on dicey initiatives. They weren't forward-thinking enough. In other words, the clients that had helped us build a thriving business were no longer considered viable because, and this is just my opinion, they weren't prepared to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars on strategies that chased technology like sailors on shore leave. It was nauseating. And I went from enjoying my work, my contribution, and the culture to endless debates that all seem to come back to just because we can doesn't mean we should. I became a black sheep in almost every room simply because I wanted to do good work with good people and create good outcomes for good clients. I wanted to engage in reasonable debate on the merits of reallocating clients' budgets into these newly emerging digital solutions. And to be clear, I was by no stretch of the imagination anti-tech, even though the lingering images of the Matrix stayed in my mind. Actually, for close to 5 years, I was one of the leading voices inside the business, advocating and in some cases spearheading the integration of technology into existing client strategies at a pace that seemed reasonable for what clients had capacity for. I was 100% all in on having the discussions, debating the pros and cons, and looking for ways to bring clients along in a world that was moving at the speed of light. Now, I understand how the shift happened from me leaning in to leaning away, and I've pinpointed when it happened, but I still don't really have a solid understanding of why the value of reason became socially unacceptable. I think at least a few of you listening will agree with me that this phenomenon didn't stop inside business. It's pervasive everywhere now. Yeah, I got a front row seat to this transition from reasonable dialogue and debate to rampant and, in many scenarios, ridiculous policies that trump performance. But that's where we are now, isn't it? Living in a society where policy overrides common sense, a basic respect for all beings, and compromises performance in order to placate some agenda that most of us aren't even seeing. You can hire this person because of these things, but shh, we don't ask whether or not they can actually do the job. And you can't hire this person even though they have all the talents, the skills, the experience to get the job done effectively and efficiently because they don't check that one box. And policy states that we must check that box. Probably if you followed the money, you'd find the real reasons policies like this exist. So I became a black sheep because I asked questions that made other people feel uncomfortable, or questions that pushed up against someone else's ego. What was being said between the lines was pretty simple. We just don't ask questions like that. And honestly, I did try to go along. I really did. But I knew I had stayed too long at the party because while I tried to make it work, I couldn't. I couldn't not ask the questions that I felt needed to be asked. And I still can't not ask the questions. But I wasn't nearly that coherent in 2012. No, I was only reading one signal. There was really only one thing that told me something had to change. And it was, I was cranky about everything all the time. It's kind of interesting in a weird, twisty kind of way that there have been 3 specific points in my life where I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. 2 of those moments were when I was working in the marketing industry. Those moments were directly connected to periods where I was trading off reason for remaining in a situation that I'd either outgrown or that wasn't meant for me anymore. Oh, did I mention that all of this was unfolding when I was part owner in the business? There's more to that story, but for now, let's focus on what I perceived at the time. Nothing made sense anymore. We'd gone through significant staffing shifts and leadership changes. That's how and when things shifted for me so quickly. But the why took some time for me to identify, and I'm still not sure that I'm completely clear. It wasn't just the business, it wasn't just the leadership, and it wasn't just the new talent or even clients that were coming into the business. Again, this is just my own humble opinion. It was a total lack of reason sweeping through the marketing industry. By definition, let's go there because I haven't gone there yet. Reason is the capacity for logical, rational, and analytical thought. Some definitions of reason are interchangeable with intelligence, good judgment, sound sense. I found this one particularly interesting, that some definitions of reason are that it's a normal mental state. It's sanity. Funny, right? Because if I had posed the pure possibility that the entire industry was mentally unstable or going insane at the time or even now, I would have been tossed out on my ear. I would have been blacklisted and I would, or just laughed out of every boardroom in the country. Well, we'll see who's laughing when all of this finally shakes out. Across the board, reason is defined as the combination or integration of some form of critical thinking. and it plays a foundational role in fields like philosophy, mathematics, computer science. Sweet baby Jesus. Don't you find it hysterically hypocritical that the very thing that is driving a wedge between us and reason, that is technology, is the foundation of the fields that it's come from? Technology is rooted in fields like mathematics and obviously computer science, but the principles and qualities that are so highly esteemed in those fields are now almost completely divorced from how it's being used. I think it's probably a little bit of divine comedy. I mean, if you were going to write a comedy, would you have thought to include this quirky little paradox? I know I wouldn't have. I also think that it's what the Matrix does best. The Matrix of the media, the marketing, and the high profile messengers excels at turning foundational truths into a complete farce, a comedy. But you won't see that unless you're looking for it. You won't see how far we have fallen in our relationship with reason until you're looking for it. For example, why has the movie The Matrix grossed only $3 billion, yet The Lion King has earned $8.1 billion? What has precipitated the nosedive of average hours of adult reading in North America from 5 hours and 29 minutes in 2013 to 19 minutes in 2025? It took 12 years for us to almost completely leave behind the written word in favor of audiobooks and video and so on. I'll tell you why. Maybe in a future episode. What series of events do you think occurred in the last 95 years that had Charles Lindbergh named Times Person of the Year in 1927 and Taylor Swift in 2023? Again, you're not going to see it unless you're looking for it. You don't see the influence of the Matrix as long as you're immersed in it. I didn't see the depth of distortion created by the media, the marketing, and the most influential messengers of our day until I was no longer immersed in it, but I felt it. Now, I would love to tell you that I was 100% conscious about all the choices that I made from 2012 onward, causing me to dodge while it seemed like everyone else around me was weaving more and more into their lives. I was not. And by more, I mean technology, these policies, this lack of reason. I wasn't 100% conscious. I wasn't even really all that coherent about what was going on for me at the time. This divergence process was 100% divinely orchestrated. It took leaving ownership, leaving full-time stable employment and a career that I once loved for me to step into the breakthrough frequency of courage. If I had been able to anticipate everything that would unfold after that moment, I probably would have stayed. I probably would have continued to believe that I didn't have the courage to navigate the ups and downs and the highs and the lowest of lows over the last decade. I probably wouldn't have even spent half the time that I have fucking around to find stuff out. And I probably wouldn't have come to appreciate the non-linear path that ultimately leads us somewhere to something that I define now as actual progress. Progress in tangible ways, sure, but more so progress in abstract, unquantifiable, and intangible ways. Progress that aligns with things that have meaning. It only came by diverging from the mainstream, the herd mentality, the groupthink, the consensus bias, whatever language you want to use. Choosing to listen to the full speeches of Trump's 2016 election run was divergent. I talked about that in episode 1. Cutting the cord and living without cable for 6 or 7 years before it became even remotely cool to do so was divergent. Tuning out the news and turning off my radio on my drive to and from work was divergent. And tuning into a cross-section of voices that were saying wildly different things was divergent. I was intentional about getting divergent because somewhere at a soul level, I knew that it was the key to reclaiming the power of reason, unplugging from the matrix and letting go of the illusions that it creates. Illusions like the value and validity of fact checkers. Illusions like the dangers of fossil fuels. Illusions like the narrative that was once known as global warming but got rebranded as climate change. Ooh, wouldn't it be fun to have conversations about those 3 things from the frequency of reason? Hawkins' research suggests that the process for activating the frequency of reason is abstraction. I like the word divergent. Divergent has the essence of rebellion and a revolutionary energy to it. That is Aquarius, where the planet Pluto is parked for the next 20 years. Divergence has a sense of sparking, initiating, and getting a little fiery. That's Aries, where the planet Neptune is going to be for the next 14 years. And divergent is about being different, developing in different directions. Contrast and opposition, which is the energy of Uranus, who comes into each sign with the intention of challenging the status quo. Uranus goes into the sign of Gemini in July of 2025 for a preview of what we can expect from April 2026 until May 2033. 3 planets that are heavy hitters in the astrological world and their impact on the collective. And, in my humble opinion, on us as individuals. 3 planets that will really challenge us to move to the edge of reason. At the frequency of reason, Hawkins found that our view of life transforms from harmonious into meaningful, and that our view of God shifts so that we can understand both the mercy and the innate wisdom woven into the infinite source and all that it creates. Getting divergent required a solid foundation of courage, neutrality, willingness, and acceptance. Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode in a series of conversations exploring how we can harness the power of consciousness to navigate these age-changing times. If you found a few insights that resonated for you, I'd appreciate it if you shared it with someone in your corner of the world. And don't forget to subscribe in order to share a comment with your thoughts, experiences, or ideas that have been sparked. This Substack space is dedicated to fostering my own creative expression, so you won't hear calls to action, sponsored messages, or promotions. But if you want to learn more about me and how I'm realigning my work to thrive in this new age, you can find a link to my website below. Until next time, I'm Trish Murray, offering Sovereign Souls a guided tour of key elements driving the creation of this new age.